everybody. This is Ricky Grow with Tracy, Harwood, and Damien, Valentine for the Completely Machinable podcast for December 2022. Hello, everybody.
Hang on,
Hello.
we're
I
November.
apologize. Yeah,
Hello.
I
We're in November.
apologize. What's that? Is this November?
It's
Yeah.
November.
Oh, my God. I beg your pardon. I've been so involved in putting together my Halloween yard. My brain is just shot. I also apologize for the little bits of, for those who are watching the video, the sunlight on my face. We're using the window in front of me for spider projections, and so the sun has to come through. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, we've got a wonderful lineup of movies to share with you. Also, don't forget, we've put the news in a blog format on our website. Thank you, Tracy, for putting so much work into putting those together. There's lots of really interesting news. I highly recommend that you check out our blog. We'll be trying to promote that more so people can keep an eye on it. I did want to make a quick note about some of the AI developments, and that's probably the big news of the year. One of the things is Adobe, or is it NVIDIA? I can't remember. I think it's Adobe, is working out a text to video editor, meaning that rather than having the standard video, the layers, and you grab a piece of video and put it on the line, you use text to call up all kinds of shots, and then put them together using text in an order that you want. Now, initially, it seems counterintuitive to do that, but once you start looking at it, it's actually a very effective way of editing for people who don't know how to do regular video or who are uncomfortable with it. Plus, you're able to search through your videos for things like people smiling. If you write people smiling, and it'll give you all the sections of all of the videos that you have in your library of people smiling. So when you do your edits, you can just jump right into that. It also automatically cuts out the sections of oohs and ahs, where people are, yeah, I mean, if you want to do that. So somebody's going, well, I think it'll automatically cut that out for you. I'm very intrigued with it. It's not something that I would use, but I'd like to take a look at it. And I think it would be very helpful for machinima directors who want to use the AI to put together their film. It might actually change the way editing looks in a film. So I'm really excited about that. And we've got that as part of our news that Tracy is putting together on our blog site. Do you guys have anything you want to say about the news at all?
I'm interested to try out the AI you just talked about. I mean, I'm not sure I'd use it for any of my real serious productions, but to play around with and see what it can do, I think it could lead to some interesting experiments.
It could. It really could. It also gives you a way of analyzing your video and the content that I think is going to be time saving. Because say, for example, that piece that I talked about earlier about people smiling, in a traditional way, you'd have to go through all of the video that you put together to find those. But the AI can jump right to it. And that's just smiling. I mean, you could put people gesturing, people, Tom, say you've got somebody named Tom in it, all sections of Tom, and it'll list all of those sections of Tom, and you just choose them and put them as part of your video. So I think it's a very intriguing way of editing. And also, I think customer feedback is going to help in shaping how they make that work. It might end up being a combination of text and actual video editing, because full text, I'm not sure exactly how that works. I need to know more about it, but you're right. It is very intriguing, and I think we should look at it.
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating area, actually. We did a whole blog post and special report on AI generators at the end of last month. And the first blog post for this month, actually out on the 31st of October, is the one that includes all the AI generator updates on it. And then back into September, I think it was, we were starting to have a look at things like DALI and Mid-Journey and what have you. So,
Mhm.
so the way that this technology has moved on so quickly is just really, really interesting, I think.
It sure is.
Uh,
One of our writers at Renderosity magazine that I work at as a virtual reporter, one of our writers, MD McCallum, came up with a novel idea of using Real Illusion's headshot. Now, that technology allows you to take a 2D picture and apply it to character creation in order to create, say, a portrait or historical figures or anything you want. Well, he decided to use AI to create a head and then used headshot to make that AI into a 3D head.
yeah.
And I thought that was a very creative way of using the AI portrait system. Now you're not limited to just photographs. You can use AI to construct any sort of strange and bizarre or hyper realistic head and then turn it into a model that you can use in your film. That's something that machinima directors and creators should keep an eye on.
That's especially good for crowd scenes as well, because obviously you want people in the background to look unique from each other, but you probably don't want to spend a lot of time coming up with unique appearances for each one. So if you can use an AI tool to create a face, you can then pull that in. You're not spending hours working on each individual one. You can do it in minutes, and that's
Yep.
a huge thing.
Yep, that's a good point. Good point. I think you're right.
The only other thing I'd like to sort of flag at this point is on the 14th of November, on that particular blog post, I've done some links to some really interesting projects that haven't really made our main cut for our discussion, including one demonstrating the use of Web3, which is by Snoop Dogg. So that'll be really interesting to take a look at. And, you know, a couple of other really interesting examples where animation is being mixed with real life, or where people are mixing 2D and 3D together quite effectively. And another one is looking at working with a massive cast, huge cast, which I thought was quite interesting. And then another one is a bit of RVB style comedy. So check out that particular project update as well.
Okay. We'll make sure we post links to that article, the blog post on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
Just remember, we have lots of content going up at completely.com. So head on over there and take a look. I do want to point out the elephant in the room, which is Phil Rice not being part of our group today. Sadly, he got in a fight with a hurricane, and he's on the bad end of it, and he has limited and at times no internet connection whatsoever down in Florida, because he lives in Florida with a big hurricane. So our best to you, Phil. We miss you today a lot. And we hope you're able to join us next month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We miss you.
Yep. All right, let's move on to our movies. I'm going to start out with my choice this month. It's funny. When I go searching for movies, sometimes it takes me a couple hours to find the thing that I want. I found this within about 2 minutes, and I said, this is my choice automatically. On Vimeo, there was a wonderful director, Federica Orlandini, who has a really nice collection of videos, but one struck me as being very, very interesting, and that's called Paths of Misery. And she uses Red Dead Redemption 2 to paint a portrait of the Old West that is counter to the narrative, the romanticized narrative of that we hold with movies and television shows, in which the heroes always triumph over the bad guys. Everybody behaves. There's this beautiful, John Ford look to everything, and instead she emphasizes the horror and the awfulness of being in the West, the terrible starvation that people endured, the random violence, the domestic fights and everything. It's less of an organized plot in it and more a series of depictions of this other side of the West that she wrote. The music is fascinating too, because it's ironic in that it uses this old spaghetti Western style rousing music. And it brings this expectation of sort of men in gunfights and the good guy mowing the person down, the silent man going on his way, with the women looking on. All of that's just wiped out. There's no heroism in this at all. And it is pretty grim for folks who have expectations about it, but I just thought it was absolutely fantastic portrait of it. Perhaps a little short and a little fragmented, but I was really impressed with it and I enjoyed it very much. What did you guys think of it?
Well, okay, yeah, grim is exactly the word I would use for it as well. Wild West, everything, death, depraved acts of violence to just simple revenge, rejection, fear, and also survival against the odds, presumably. This was really about sickness and horror of it all, which I think it was really interestingly portrayed through the role of a traveler.
Oh, that's right. Yes, the person on the horse.
Yeah. Well, I think this traveler is really interesting because it's this kind of, I think it's a kind of liminal tale of some kind of transient state. We don't know who this character is or what his relationship is to the other characters in the film. He's in this between space of going forwards towards something new in the way that he's portrayed, and this the sense of freedom that kind of comes with that versus actually running away from the destruction that's left behind in these other scenes. So you've got this kind of really interesting juxtaposition of scenes, and I think it's portrayed by that galloping horse, which picks up speed through the film, with almost stills of the aftermath of something terrible or shocking that's kind of happened. Whether or not the rider is the victim or the perpetrator, you kind of never know, but probably he's both. And of course that music, which I want to say something about, Morricone's The Ecstasy of Gold is what it is. And it's perfect for this kind of spaghetti Western-like portrayal, which is the sense of thing that came through to me. Obviously, that's Sergio Leone's good, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the rider even has that kind of Tuco-esque style character in the saddle, a kind of madness driven by a certain need, except he's not wearing that Mexican sombrero. And it's got an almost biblical overtone. But what's the ecstasy here? It's not the thought of finding gold near a gravestone, for sure, because that's where that music is played in the film at the end, where he's looking for the gold buried near the gravestone. So maybe the music is sort of about escape to something more golden. I don't know. I guess the sense of biblical comes from that tinny church bell in the music and the thunder of the galloping horse's hooves told through the drum beats. And actually, after I watched this film, I wanted to listen to that music on its own, because I wasn't sure how much of this film was the music and how much of it was the animation. So I went and listened to the music on its own, because I remember growing up with that sort of film music, as I think we all did at a certain age.
Yeah.
So I'll put a link to that in the show notes when we get to that, because I think you'll find that quite an interesting listen as well.
Right.
So those were my thoughts as I was kind of watching it, and then we come to that end quote, which is on the screen just for a few seconds. The quote says, "This place ain't no such thing as civilized. It's man so in love with greed he's forgotten himself and found only appetites." And I think this, to me, felt like the inspiration for the whole film. The quote is attributed to Dutch van der Linde, who is a character from the original Red Dead game, and is even more iconically associated with the Red Dead Redemption 2 game. I think the quote is meant to reflect this kind of brutish but fair behavior of Dutch, sort of life's been rough to me, it is what it is kind of thing. Right. So you've kind of got this toughness, which made me think that the traveller is actually moving on, not so much bothered about the things he's left behind, but more to continue his kind of lifestyle as he passes through, taking whatever may come in the process. So I concluded that the rider is in the moment, and it's all about the liminal. It's not about the before or after scenes at all. It's about that sort of liminal space between those things. And I think it's a really cleverly done little film because of that. It's nothing like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. There are no hard stairs to dodge, as Ricky.
Well, there's no heroism. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, even though it emphasizes the violence and the brutishness of it, there's still a heroic aspect to it, an elevated aspect to it. This has none of that.
Yeah, exactly. But because of the way it kind of comes over, I think that's a really good fit between the music and what you see on the screen, and it kind of gave a new sort of set of meanings to that music, which was fun to think about. So I really enjoyed it. Yeah, really.
I was
really
wondering what your reaction was going to be to it.
Yeah.
What did you think, Damien?
Well, there's two things that stood out to me. One is Ricky mentioned it's kind of a little bit fragmented. I actually like that because you're getting snapshots of different people and whatever difficulties they're facing in this period of history. And if there had been a focused story, it would have put that all on just a limited number of characters. But this kind of shows, it makes it feel like this affects everyone, because it's not, it's not focused on one or two characters. It's telling a wider picture of everything around. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I really like that. And I don't think it would have worked with a narrative story as such. I don't just mean having a heroic element, because obviously that's not part of this film at all, but you could have a story with no heroism in it, but I don't think it would work quite the same way. This is more like different snapshots of what life was like, and it was obviously very brutal and very hard. And I think, as you said, Ricky, a lot of that gets forgotten in the films and TV shows that generally come out about life in the Wild West. So that was good. The other thing that stood out to me, which is more on the technical side, and I think Phil would probably latch onto this as well, is how did they make it? Because I remember you and Phil have talked a lot about playing Red Dead and figuring out how to make machinery with it. And of course, Phil has made his own film with Red Dead Redemption. He has talked about how difficult it was with the limited tools available, which are more mod tools rather than anything provided officially.
Right.
And this looks really excellent. I don't just mean the graphics, because obviously the game looks stunning, but the cinematography and all of that, I don't know how they did it, because from what Phil said, that this must have been a massive undertaking just to pull off those shots.
Well, I think some of the scenes were actual cut scenes in the the film, which made it a little bit easier because it was already created. They just used sections of it to blend in together to make their point.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'd like to point out that this movie is the kind of movie that only machinima can make. It's a method and an idea that I think machinima directors and people who are interested in machinima should pay attention to, because it's sort of an essay. It's sort of an idea that this director had, and that she wanted to have a way to construct an argument for her idea. And she used sequences, cutscenes, she filmed gameplay, she used everything that's part of a game to put together this essay, this notion, this interesting experimental story that she created, that I don't think would be the same if you've got Pixar involved in it, or a professional company who created 3D models and organized the story and everything. There's something that is so uncreative about that. Well, not uncreative, but something predictable, I think, in a way. You know how it would turn out, because they wouldn't emphasize such awfulness. Animation has that, what they call the Walt Disney factor, which Disney has affected animation in the United States so much that people think that animation is just for kids, or if it's for adults, it has to have this sort of well-made story with heroes and morality and all of that. Machinima can allow you to have an idea and then find it, maybe even the idea came from the game itself, and then use the game to create this essay, this construction of an idea in a way that is completely unique, and it's fast generally and fairly easy to do. And I was so impressed with that. And I would urge machinima directors who want to get some inspiration to dig into your favorite game and find things that you want, that ideas that are fed back to you that you can create something with. Like recently, my partner, Lisa Morton, who's a writer, wanted to do a short little book trailer. And she asked me if I could create a background scene to use for the graphics and narration. And I was playing Elden Ring at the time. And at one point, after in the story of the Elden Ring, this huge tree is burning, and there are all these cinders that are coming through everywhere you go. So I found this sort of dark forest, and cinders were going across it. And I recorded about 30 seconds of that, of the camera in place. And we used that as the background. And it made me think, well, that would be an interesting thing, is find all sorts of backgrounds and make them available for people who want to use them in their scenes. I mean, you could use a moving background to create as part of a scene that you wanted to do. And that led me to other ideas and other ideas. So the point that I'm trying to make is that machinima is still a very viable way of telling stories, and can often lead to creative solutions that are completely different from your traditional 2D animation.
Especially in games, open world games, where they put a lot of effort into making it seem like a living world. So if you just stood there for 10 minutes, you would see characters going around, basically living their lives or doing whatever it is they do in that particular game. And I think, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of potential there just to explore and see what you can come up with.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm guessing metaverse type stuff will result in potentially more of these kinds of things. It's I think we're in that in-between stage at the moment, aren't we, where people are migrating in their droves to Unreal Engine and what have you. And those aren't persistent virtual worlds as such. They're just worlds that people have created for their own ends. And that leaves just a few kind of virtual social worlds like Second Life and Fortnite and whatnot. Where people and Minecraft and what have you, where people are able to sort of go in and gather that kind of background information, if you like, background data, and experience it. But once we start getting into more different types of persistent worlds, we'll probably see more of this kind of thing come to the fore again.
Yeah. I wanted to mention to everybody that Federica Orlandini, the director of Paths of Misery, has several other interesting films on her Vimeo site. We will provide a link to her in our blog post and our show notes. She's terrific. She's a thinking director, so all of her films have a point to make, sometimes a social point, sometimes an intellectual point, but they're all smart and intelligent. I hope at some point we might be able to do an interview with her. So if you're listening, Federica, please contact us. We'd love to talk with you. And if you have any comments about this film or anything else, contact us at talk@completelymachinima.com. If you have news that you want to share with us that we've missed, you can use that avenue to contact us. And unless you guys have any further comments, we'll close out the session.
No, that was an excellent choice, Phil.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny you made that mistake, because I think Phil would probably choose this.
Yeah,
He
good
would.
pick.
Yes, good pick. All
That's
right,
why
thank
you cut his internet so that he couldn't choose his film, didn't you?
No, no. Yeah, best to you all. I hope you guys had a good October, and we're kicking off November with Paths of Misery by Federica Orlandini. Thank you for talking with us, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.